Hey, how are you doing? This video is going to be titled Why Incoherent Dielectric Acceleration is Wrong. It's basically about the claim from some people on the flat earth side that incoherent dielectric acceleration, and also people on globe earth side, believe it or not, that this is causing a downward bias for matter in our world. So this is wrong, and I'm going to detail how. Okay, let's get started. Okay, these are the sections. 1, the atomic model. 2, Earth negative, sky positive. 3, the Van de Graaff generator. 4, downward bias, question mark. 5, what is the cause of weight? 6, magnets. So there are the 6 topics I will be focusing on. There will be a small extras at the end as well. And I might have to stop for a sip of water here and there because I have a bit of reading to do. And my mouth is already dry, so please tolerate that. Okay. 1, the atomic model. The atomic model is a descriptive model that has 3 main parts. A, the proton, which has a positive charge. B, the electron, which has a negative charge. And C, the neutron, which has no or is neutral of charge. The molecular makeup of hydrogen is described as being in the form of 1 proton, 1 electron, and no or 0 neutrons. It is the least dense matter known to exist and holds the atomic number of 1. But the molecular makeup of helium is described as being in the form of 2 protons, 2 electrons, and 2 neutrons. It is the second least dense matter known to exist and holds the atomic number of 2. The molecular makeup of lithium is described as being in the form of 3 protons, 3 electrons, and 4 neutrons. It is the third least dense matter known to exist and holds the atomic number of 3. So a trend is formed by this, where each element has a specific atomic number based primarily on their molecular makeup and density weight. Hydrogen is the least dense and has the atomic number of 1. Helium is the second least dense and has the atomic number of 2. Lithium has the atomic number of 3, and so on, etc. So what gives them their main difference in weight and or density? Neutrons is the answer, as although protons do add weight and density, in the description atomically, it is neutrons that add the most weight and density change. So essentially, what are neutrons? Neutrons are best described as innate matter, and on an atomic level, everything is made up of a lot more neutrons than protons or electrons, as each element has either an equal amount of or more neutrons than protons or electrons, with the exception of hydrogen 1 and helium 3. The basic claim of incoherent dielectric acceleration proponents is that all matter has a type of electric potential, so consequently matter also has a certain amount of magnetic potential. As the two are intrinsically linked, due to one having the ability to cause the other under the correct circumstances. Magnetism and electricity, that is. Static potential would be a good way to describe this, but what causes or creates the static electric effect? Static electricity is mainly a buildup of electric charge that due to being unbalanced negatively and positively needs to be released from the surface of an object, as balance needs to be restored electrically. When balance is restored electrically, this is known as neutral, where an object has no buildup of unbalanced positives and negatives, so it essentially loses its static charge. Static electricity is manifested by rubbing two materials together or through the movement of an engine, etc., which causes the aforementioned imbalance. So the static electric effect needs to be manifested in some way, otherwise an object will be neutrally charged and will not exhibit the static electric effect. Now, as was earlier discussed, the atomic model describes all atoms having the potential to be made up of 3 separate parts: positively charged protons, negatively charged electrons, and neutrally charged neutrons. And it is these very protons and electrons that cause the imbalance, or I should say, they are coerced into an imbalanced state. This means that the neutrons, which make up the majority of matter, are free of charge and balance, and are not exhibiting the static electric effect, as that effect requires mediation from an outside source, as an electrical imbalance needs to be created for this effect to be realized. So static potential does not really mean anything, as the potential is always there, but it must be created to give the effect, making the effect an occurrence as opposed to a constant. That's an important point, because we don't experience it all the time. We experience it occurring, but we don't experience it as a constant. So, section 2, Earth negative, sky positive. The proponents of incoherent dielectric acceleration will make the claim that the Earth has a negative charge and the sky has a positive charge. Now, this is quite the claim. So I personally checked the validity of this claim and was met with mixed results, unfortunately, as the results were threefold. Firstly, it was stated that the Earth did indeed have a negative charge. Secondly, it was stated that the Earth was in fact neutrally charged. And yet a third stated that the Earth was said to be negatively charged, but there was no actual proof to really support this, and it was more of a theory or possibility. There is even a claim that just the surface of Earth is negatively charged, and this is caused by the heat from the centre of the globe Earth, as that has a claimed molten iron core. So basically there is no real evidence that the Earth has a negative or positive charge. The sky is claimed to have a positive charge most of the time, with the exception of storms, which are mostly negative in charge or create a large negative charge. It's claimed that the large negative charge that is created within a storm disperses the negative charges underneath it on the ground, which would explain why lightning strikes, which are mostly negative in charge, are infused with the ground, something known as earthing. But this claim is also begging the question of a negatively charged Earth's surface, as that has not been shown to be a fact, just a possibility at present. But this claim would explain how a lightning strike would hit the ground even if the Earth had a negative charge. But maybe they just needed to make this up to fit into a belief of an Earth surface that is negatively charged, as lightning would not work within their belief if the Earth had a negative charge and the negative charge from a storm did not repel the negative charge underneath it on the ground. We kind of travel in circles with this, as it requires begging the question, right? So it's kind of a difficult thing for them to get over. The proponents of incoherent dielectric acceleration claim a downward bias vector, kind of similar to the claims of gravitational acceleration of times past, pre-Einstein's theory of general relativity in 1915. This means that they assert that all objects and substances are being attracted to the Earth's surface by a change in magnetic polarity. So when an object is thrown up in the air, its polarity changes from a negative or neutral to a positive, bringing it back down to the ground again, as opposites attract and like repels when it comes to electricity and magnetics. But this would mean that when there is a storm around us, that we will see a difference in this phenomena, as the storm is claimed to change the polarity balance between Earth and sky. So, why don't we see something different happening when we throw something up in the air during a storm, as opposed to the item just coming back down if this incoherent dielectric acceleration claim is true? We should see a different effect of some kind, not just the exact same thing that we always see, which is the object falling back down in no unusual fashion. This is, in my opinion, a death blow to the postulation that incoherent dielectric acceleration is playing any part in the matter vector directionality that we observe in our world. And a downward bias claim does not take evaporation and gas behavior into account at all, as gas molecules utilize every possible vector there is. 3. The Van de Graaff Generator. The Van de Graaff Generator is just a generator of static electricity that utilizes two internal rollers, one made of a material that attracts positive charge and another that is made of a material that attracts negative charge. There is one roller at the bottom and another roller at the top. There is also a metal comb under the bottom roller and another metal comb over the top roller, and a belt running between both rollers that is made of a neutrally charged material like cotton. All this is connected to a motor that drives the belt and the rollers, which in turn creates an electric field between both the rollers and the combs near them, which separates the negative electrons from the positive ions. Now, there is more to this generator, but there is no point in detailing it, as the whole apparatus is useless without its motor. Okay, motor being the operative word here. The reason I speak about this apparatus is because people who are proponents of incoherent dielectric acceleration use the Van de Graaff generator, the Van de Graaff, as a kind of proof for their postulations concerning the static potential of matter. But as I stated earlier, the apparatus is absolutely useless without its motor, and it proves that the occurrence known as static electricity requires an outside mediation, and although it is a natural phenomenon, there seems to be no evidence that it is causing a vector directionality within innate matter. Apparatuses like the Van de Graaff can manipulate static electric charge once it has created it. So that's the important part. It can manipulate it only after it has created it. And proponents of incoherent dielectric acceleration can and will show demonstrations of small pieces of paper and metal being levitated off their surface using this type of machine. See, this is the problem. They show what I would consider false equivalencies to reality. So for their demonstrations, they don't have the backing of a naturally observed phenomenon, and then an experiment to prove their claim. Their demonstrations are all within a machine. And it's okay to use man-made devices in an experiment, but you have to have a phenomenon first to work off of that. And their phenomenon is not things falling and rising. That's not their phenomenon. Their phenomenon is static electricity. But it takes a whole lot of effort to cause these changes and make these small objects move. But can they levitate a brick or a phone? No. So what's the point in their demonstrations? As I said, because they're not analogous to reality. Because we see things of all sizes falling, and we have tiny gas molecules rising. So we see falling and rising on everything. And if they're going to be changing the polarity to lift a small piece of metal, then that change of polarity should lift a brick or a phone as well, not just a very small piece of metal, which is basically just tiny filings. That's all it is. So once the polarity changes, then the whole lot should change. Because that, I don't see any way out for them with that. If you change, because their point is that it's polarity that's causing a supposed downward bias. But if you change the polarity, then you should make anything go up that would fall down, like a brick or a phone. These people claim that incoherent dielectric acceleration is a very weak force and even describe it as negligible. So what is the official definition of negligible? Negligible. So small or unimportant as to be not worth considering, insignificant. Similar words: trivial, trifling, insignificant, unimportant, minor. This does not bode well for this claim, as the claim is dependent on incoherent dielectric acceleration being the cause of something falling to the ground, with dielectric acceleration claimed to be the final deciding factor in what direction and vector moving matter takes. 4. What is the cause of weight? Outside of its calculations of amounts, weight is just something that is inherent in all matter. So what is the cause? Weight can be defined in the following way. An object's or substance's weight is defined by the amount of and density of matter, innate or charged, found within the confines of the object's or substance's volume. Okay, I don't think anyone can argue with that. That defines weight. Okay, that defines what weight is, if you want colloquially, not in a calculated version. But that's how you have to start there to calculate it. Start there to calculate. So this means that matter density is the cause of weight, right? So density of matter is the cause of weight. Now earlier we looked at the atomic model and how that is structured. In that model, the molecular weight of an element is defined by the amounts of each of the three components that are described within its makeup: the proton, electron, and neutron. These three components are just descriptive of a positive, negative, and neutral charge to the internal matter that makes up the element. Now, when most people think about weight, they think about a linear downward force upon a scales. But gas does not show this effect, yet gas still has a weight. To weigh a gas, you must contain it, but only after you have weighed the container without the gas first. Then once the gas is added, you subtract the difference. The gas's weight is broken up into many tiny molecular parts that move about in all possible vectors. Mix up the water. Just because something has weight, that does not automatically mean that it will have a linear downward bias in its vector. That's important. People automatically view weight as a linear downward bias due to gravity being used as a downward pulling force for a long time, and then obviously it's been changed away from that to an effect, but that has people basically brainwashed into believing weight means things go down. Right? This weight does not automatically mean linear downward bias in its vector, and this is the proof. As is shown and proven to us by the natural behavior of gas. You see, the proponents of the incoherent dielectric acceleration claim have the same dependent variable as I have, and that is that we all see matter vector directionality, but the difference between us is really twofold. Firstly, I do not ignore the fact that matter has two vectors, both an up and a down vector, as we see with the Firstly, I do not ignore the fact that matter has two vectors, both an up and a down vector, as we see with the hydrological cycle. Right? Because the hydrological cycle, you have evaporation of water becoming water vapor, rising up. When it condenses, it becomes clouds. Then, when the phase changes enough, it becomes rain. The rain falls down back to the ground. Okay, so that's a hydrological cycle. So, two vectors. Secondly, their independent variable has to be static electric potential. But how do they conjure this static potential without the outside mediation of a motor or similar apparatus to show their claim downward bias? So this is the problem they have. They have to create the static. They can't just manipulate the natural static in the air. They have to make something move. They have to create the whole thing within an apparatus. And this is the problem. They can create static electricity by rubbing a balloon off their head and then sticking the balloon to the wall. But what has that got to do with things falling and rising? Whereas I can show with natural manipulation that a natural cause and effect will occur in both factors. That means I can show how density, a change in density, and in accordance with the medium that it is in, will create a down or an up vector. So I can show this with natural manipulation. I don't have to go as far as getting a machine and creating a density. I don't have to do that. I can do it, and I don't even have to do it. I can show it with the hydrological cycle. So I don't even have to show it because it's there all the time within our world. Density of matter causes a natural displacement effect in our natural world. Convection is the best constant example of this, as convection describes the effect that temperature has on innate matter. Temperature in the positive will bring down the density of innate matter, but temperature in the negative will bring up the density of innate matter. This effect is constantly shown in our waters and gases. Temperature constantly causes movement in our waters and gases due to the density displacement of matter. Now, most people will say that the more dense matter will displace the less dense matter. But is this really true, as technically they are displacing each other, as one cannot exist in the space of the other? When a lead weight is dropped from a high elevation, it will continue to fall until it finds sufficient structural support for its density. But while it is falling, it is pushing all the matter that is not dense enough to support it out of its way, displacing this less dense matter. But all that is actually occurring is natural order, as the more dense lead cannot exist up in the sky, no more than the gases it displaces can exist on the ground. So technically both densities displace each other. Higher density forces lower density up and out of its way, while lower density forces higher density down and out of its way. Now people might look at that and say, how does lower density force higher density down? Well, it's making it impossible for the higher density to be up there. So it's causing the higher density to fall, if you want to say it that way. I'm not saying that it has a consciousness. I'm just saying that's the way it works. So the higher density is forced down because it can't stay up there. The same way as the lower density is forced up, as because it can't stay down here. You know, if you're talking about gases and lead, two completely different densities. You know, that's so one can exist in the air and one cannot. You know, one has to exist on the ground. You see, it's very easy to show the relationship between density differential and matter vector directionality, as it's provable to all with ease, but the same cannot be said for incoherent dielectric acceleration. Anyone can heat water and watch convection take place, which is analogous to what we see in our everyday world, where density differentials cause displacement. But if one is to demonstrate static electricity, then the demonstration will not be analogous to our everyday experience. By everyday experience, I mean some matter falling while other matter rises, as that is what we see and experience in our day-to-day lives. I refer you back to the hydrological cycle, where simultaneously the molecule H2O is both rising and falling. The cause of this is temperature, phase change, and density. Is there electricity in the sky, in the ground, and within the waters? Yes, but is it causing the hydrological cycle? No, it is not. Density displacement is naturally occurring order, whereas static electricity is naturally occurring disorder. Both are based on a rebalancing within our world, but only one of them is causing matter vector directionality, and it's not static electric potential, or any other associated electric effect unless it can be demonstrated and proven through science experiment that it is causing matter vector directionality. If electricity is the cause, then prove it, because that's the problem. The proponents of this, I understand why they like the idea, but they're not proving it. You're not proving what you're saying. That's the problem. You have to prove these things. We are proving that relative density equilibrium, sometimes called disequilibrium, or Rayleigh gravitation, we are proving with science experiment that this is what causes the vector directionality of matter. 6. Magnets. Opposites attract and like repels. That is the rule of thumb for magnetism and electricity. So if we have a negatively charged earth and a positively charged sky, then by proxy, if I turn the positive side of a magnet to the ground, and then there should be an attraction, but equally the negative side of the magnet should be attracted to the sky's claimed positive charge also. This should cause the magnet to levitate, right? But now we know this does not happen. This does not happen. We don't see magnets levitating. The proponents of incoherent dielectric acceleration, which is a fancy term, like to state that it causes all kinds of things, but in the same breath, they will proclaim that it is nearly an unnoticeable force, going as far as to term it as negligible. So, if this Earth is constantly negatively charged, as is claimed, and the sky is constantly positively charged, as is claimed, then I should be able to levitate a magnet by turning the positive down and the negative up, because there should be an equal draw either way, or some kind of a draw either way. It should be something we should be able to do, levitate, but we can't levitate a magnet unless we have other magnets to do that. So you can levitate a magnet if you have a positive and a negative, or two positives and two negative. Let's say if you have positive or negative, you can repel both sides or attract both sides, whichever. But you can't just do that in mid-air. I can't go out in my back garden with a magnet and hold it out and leave go and expect it to just levitate. It's not going to happen. So which is it? As extremely weak forces cannot cause constant matter vector directionality, especially when that extremely weak negligible force needs an outside mediation to actualize, because they need a motor, they need something to make it, they need that friction, they need physical involvement in that way to make something happen. It doesn't just happen. Do magnets act differently during a storm? I cannot give a straight answer on this, as I can't seem to get a straight answer off Google. I can't get a straight answer on that off Google. That's really strange. I couldn't get the information. All I get is that solar storms, right, question mark, will cause problems for magnetic compasses, etc. But I can say that someone somewhere, I can say that someone somewhere would have noticed if magnets, start that again. Sorry, but I can say that someone somewhere would have noticed if magnetic material started moving around erratically during storms. We would notice this happening, right? So if storms were having this big negative, were pushing negative charge out of its way from it's supposedly on the ground, then we would notice a big difference with magnets during storms. And I don't know of anyone, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know, I can't find any information that states, yeah, magnets do all crazy things when there's a storm. I don't see it, I can't find anything about that. It should be right there. I shouldn't have to look and search for it. It should be just right there. If this is a real thing, we should be able, this should be something that's noticeable during the storm, because it's supposed to be a big negatively charged thing. The Earth is supposed to be negatively charged. So there should be some kind of erratic, crazy behavior with magnets at least, but we don't see that I'm aware of. For me, I really do not see an argument for incoherent dielectric acceleration, as this would mean that we would have many anomalies during thunderstorms, and also with magnets and their interaction with the ground and sky anomalies we don't experience ever. Coherent magnetism is the magnet that we all know. It has a positive and a negative side. A dipole magnet, just a basic magnet, right, has a positive and negative. Incoherent magnetism is really just neutral charge that can exhibit static electric potential under certain conditions only. See, this is the thing. Incoherent magnetism is basically just neutrally charged that has the ability to exhibit static electric potential, but only under certain conditions. You have to do a lot of nonsense to create the effect. You can rub a balloon off your hair and then stick it to a wall. But what has that got to do with things going down and up? I don't see the point. Extra claims, right? These are some extra things that have been claimed from the proponents of incoherent dielectric acceleration. The proponents of incoherent dielectric acceleration attribute many things to it without actual proof of cause. You have to prove the cause, prove that it's the cause of the effect. For example, they attribute our gas pressure gradient to it, something that is caused not by magnetic electrostatic potential, but purely caused by our sun, and not static potential, something I will make a video about in the future. Yeah, the gas pressure gradient is purely caused by our sun. I'm going to make a video about it. The sun is, without the sun, all gas would equalize. There would be no gas pressure gradient. There would be no gas cycles. So the sun is the cause of everything. The sun causes all that. It's not incoherent dielectric acceleration. It's not a force of gravity that was thrown out in 1915. It's none of that. It's the sun. These people, they never look at the thing. What about the thing in the sky that allows everything to do everything? You can't have gas cycles without the sun. You can't have this. You can't have convection without the sun. All these things, the sun causes all of it. But these people like to just ignore just completely ignore the thing that's staring in their face. I just don't get it. These people also freely admit, and when I say these people, I'm not just talking about incoherent dielectric acceleration people. I'm talking about, right, gravity, force of gravity people, which is out of date since 1915. These people too. You may as well walking straight into a wall. The sun is right there. What more do you need? Just look at what the sun does, what it causes. It's crazy. Anyway, I'll move on. Rant over. These people also freely admit that other outside influences like temperature, density, gas cycles, etc. are way more powerful than incoherent dielectric potential, but still assert static charge as the cause of many things. They keep asserting this is a cause of things, but yet it's supposed to be a negligible force that doesn't really do anything. You can stick a balloon to a wall. Yeah, okay, the static charge, you have to pay attention with machinery and other things. Yes, that's true. But they're all things that do things. They create the static charge. They even state that a gas loses its electric potential when it cools and turns into a liquid. But they are begging the question here and adding the term electric potential to gas in place of the truth, which is intra and intermolecular bond changes. These changes involve a description of electrostatic bonds. Yes, right. The description of it is electrostatic bonds, not denying that. But these bonds don't stop once a gas becomes a liquid, as a gas will have intramolecular bonds, which bonds the molecule together, right? whereas a liquid will have intermolecular bonds, which bonds the molecules to other molecules, right? That's what it is. But the claim from the proponents of incoherent dielectric acceleration is that once a gas cools down enough to become a liquid, then it loses its electric potential. But rain falls, so is dielectric potential not responsible for the rain falling? I thought it was creating a downward bias. It doesn't make any sense to what they're saying. If it loses its electric potential, then why is rain falling? Do you know what I mean? This is more, it's more contradiction as far as I'm concerned. And they're not, like, what electric potential does gas have? Because gas, other than ionized gas, which is plasma, that's affected by a magnetic field, because it has electromagnetic properties. But gas, gas is not affected by liquid gas, yeah, but gas in gas form, liquid gas it's an oxymoron, but gas in gas form, not in liquid form, let's just say oxygen in liquid form, I think can be affected the same way as nitrogen can be affected in liquid form, but not as a gas by electricity or magnetism, because it has to be affected by both if it's affected by one, because they both have two sides of the same coin. Final points. The description of the atomic model describes innate matter as being the main cause of weight, right? As it does. The neutrons, right? It's described in that way. It's a description, but they describe it, innate matter, as being the main cause of weight. 2. The hydrological cycle utilizes two very distinct vectors, both an up and a down, right? It does. Hydrological cycle, right? There's two vectors. All matter has weight, but not all matter takes a downward vector. See gas behavior. 4. Incoherent dielectric acceleration remains a colloquial theory, so I can't say it, maybe it's right, as it is not backed by science experiment. 5. Relative density equilibrium is backed by science experiment that adhere to the scientific method. 6. The observed natural phenomena for incoherent dielectric acceleration is static electric imbalance. That's their naturally observed phenomena. That is the phenomena for static electricity. Static electricity. We know what it is. We know what causes it. The observed natural phenomena for relative density equilibrium is density differential displacement. So the natural phenomena for incoherent dielectric acceleration is static electricity, which doesn't show a displacement with that natural phenomena. It doesn't show a displacement, it shows an imbalance. If you go into the description of it, it's an imbalance of negative and positive charge. That's what it is. Whereas relative density equilibrium, the naturally observed phenomenon, is things being displaced up and down. Going down, going up, two vectors. That is the observed effect. The naturally observed effect. So their naturally observed effect has no relevance to things going up and down that they seem to be able to prove. 8. The claim that the Earth has a constant negative charge is not proven, nor is the claim that the sky holds a constant positive charge. There is electricity. Yes, we constantly have electricity. It's constantly being created. Human beings move and create electricity. But does that mean the Earth is always negative and the sky is always positive? No. Is there evidence of this, that this is true, that the Earth is always negatively charged and the sky is always positively charged? No, there's evidence of the opposite, because we have storms which are claimed to be a completely negative charge. So that straight away kills that argument for the sky to be positively charged. And lightning does hit the ground. So, I know they had the explanation of how a storm will disperse the negative charge underneath it, because light repels with electricity and magnetism. But that's begging the question as well. It hasn't been proven that there is a constant negative or positive, in the Earth and the sky. So there is charge, but there's no proof of it having a polarity. 9. Magnets do not levitate in midair when their positive sides are turned downward and negative sides are turned upwards. That doesn't happen, right? So I don't, a magnet will fall because it'll be more dense than the medium it's in. That's it. If you leave a magnet go, it won't float, it'll just go down, right? Because it'll be more dense. 10. Magnets or objects thrown up in the air do not tend to act differently during a storm. Yeah, you can throw a magnet or anything else up in the air, and that's more dense than gas, right? Because you won't build a hole at it that's not more dense than gas. So you can throw a magnet or whatever other object up in the air, and it will come back down during a storm, same as it will when the storm isn't there. No difference. 11. Static electricity must be created by friction or an electric motor. We do not constantly experience it in the natural world. We only experience it occasionally, right? So we don't experience it all the time. So we do. It's always there, but we don't experience it. We experience it now and again. We get a shock off something, or you're rubbing the cat or the dog, and you get a shock on your hand, or you shock them. You're standing next to a fridge, you get a shock off it. This is all static. So you're rubbing your hair or whatever. Yeah, we do experience it, but it's not. But it's not a constant thing. It's an imbalance. Whereas you will never have a time when you throw your phone up in the air and it won't fall through the air. That won't happen. As long as it's air you're standing in, right, that phone is coming back down. 12. The static electric force is called by its proponents negligible, so not important. So that's the problem. You can't claim something that's negligible is actually creating an up and down, a downward bias. You can't claim that. It's just too big a claim. You have to be able to support those things. Claiming something is negligible is saying it's not really important at all. Well, if it's not important at all, then how are you claiming that it's causing so many things? Because the proponents of this would claim that it's proven that electricity is 26 times more 26 times more powerful than gravity. Powerful than gravity is nothing. There is no such thing as gravity. So it's 26 times more powerful than nothing. But that's not telling you anything. You're going to have to come up with more than it causes everything, but it's negligible. You know what I mean? They're contradicting arguments. You need to prove the cause of the effect. Otherwise forget it, lads. Okay, I will end the presentation here as I feel that I have pointed out enough holes in the incoherent dielectric acceleration colloquial theory to hopefully change the minds of many and to do away with the pseudoscience claim once and for all. Thanks for watching.